number 34, and the last 2/3 of number 39. Two issues there, section 314, 315. Then on page 3.
Trying to get my sheet laid out here. So if you would, please.
No problem. On page 2, you have 2 amendments that are outstanding. The first one is number 34 and a portion of 39, section 314, 315. Those are the only 2 outstanding on page 2. On page 3, you have 48, 55, 56, 57, 58, and then 60 through 63. And then on page 4, the first 3, 64, 65, 66. 68 is outstanding, and then 70 through 73. So 70, 71, 72, 73.
Mr. Chairman, Don, did you say 70? 70? Okay, thank you.
Beg your pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. You're in charge.
No, go ahead.
What's that, Mr. Chairman?
Did you have something you were gonna, so my co-chairman is chairmaning, if that's a verb.
Yeah.
I can't hear you, Representative Walters.
Your question.
Yes,
Well, they were arguing who's
gotcha.
Yeah. You do it. No, you do it. No, you do
Mr. Chairman, it's the acoustics in here. Just telling you,
Yeah.
they're not the best.
Speaking of boats.
Is there something you can do about that?
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair. How would you like to proceed?
Well, Mr. Co-Chair, I think you want to do the easy one. You want to do an easy one first?
Let's do an
See
easy.
if we can warm up. Mr. Co-Chair, I would, where'd it go? Here we go. So if we go to item 71. So this was the this was House Amendment 3025, 30 Amendment 25 regarding cash-based budgeting. I would make a motion that we delete and further amend so that what happens is that we would delete the language that requires for the next biennium recommended appropriations not exceed the total revenue specified as 2/3 of general, basically that first sentence. That we would delete that because that directs the study to come to a foregone conclusion, but that we would adopt the language, delete and further amend so that we would have the Select Committee on Capital Financing and Investments to study cash-based budgeting and report by November 15th of 2022. We would adopt that language. And if you have some additional either sideboards or expansion or specific language you would like to add to make sure we get back what I think the sponsor of that amendment intended, we'd be happy to entertain that as a friendly amendment.
So I was just thinking, do we want, is November 15th the right day?
You guys had the discussion on your end, we didn't on ours,
So
so.
we might want more time, is what I'm saying.
We can visit
Mr.
that.
Chairman, I think the November 15th makes sense because we also have an election this year and some of the members may not be back for the next legislative session. So having this report for this group would be good. And if there needs to be more studied, we can carry it on to the next interim with the new group.
Well, we serve through.
Mr. Chairman?
December. Go ahead.
And that's a really good point. However, the problem is that I don't know what election day is this year. I know it's what is this, it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday, or the Tuesday after the first.
At first, the
Yeah,
first
anyway, something like that. So I don't know what day that is, but if we have to have the report done by that date, I think that makes it really difficult. All the work has to be done right in the middle of the general election. And we know that that's hard. November 8th, thank you. Yeah, since if I'm going to do this again, I have to run again, I should write that down and remember that. So I would just think that maybe if we had that report done by December 31, that would allow us to finish, that would allow the CAPFIN group to meet and finish up that final work after the election, and then give some time for the report to be made and then be submitted. But that's just a thought. That's just off the top of my head. I'm certainly open to other thoughts or other discussion on that, Mr. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, same here. And do we want to include that we will evaluate going to a annual base budget?
Well, we can review the feasibility of that. I think that's what we're all going to study. If you want to, I consider that a friendly amendment. If that's what we're going to study. But if you want a friendly amendment to make sure we study that, I'm happy to do that.
Go ahead.
So a date in December is probably better, but December 31st is pretty late to get the report because then we can't study it until January. I'm thinking there will be a JAC meeting on supplemental budget somewhere in the 7th to the 15th. I don't have the dates. So have that report ready for then.
Be nice to
Because
have.
since so many appropriation members are on CAPFIN, we can coordinate a meeting with that meeting. Just thinking out loud, sir.
Oh, I mean, if you want December the 10th or December the 15th, I mean, I don't think it makes,
I don't
think it's either neither here or there, but I think it's more practical.
So let's just say December 1.
I think staff said thank you.
To
Well,
include
that means they have to work over Thanksgiving.
annual base budgeting. But what we want to know, to fully understand is just what happens and everything that we need to change in terms of, every fund and where all the revenues go and what we're really saving, other than in terms of how complicated it is to transition.
Mr. Chairman, I think I understand the merits of the motion. I have one question, that is House Bill 147 remains alive. And this is unfortunately in direct conflict with this amendment. So we need to know which one prevails. And then ideally, if this falls away, if House Bill 147 is enacted, we would try to put that same language in House Bill 147 as it moves through the process or fails. And the big difference is between the two is that bill has essentially the identical study going to the Joint Revenue Committee. This one has it going to the Select Cap Finance Committee.
So that's one amendment you should bring, even if it might.
Okay,
You don't want revenue bill
I think that's true. What's that?
if it comes out of the draw. I hope it-
Either that or we just put in here that this footnote takes precedence over. So now that point taken, I mean, I think, Mr. Chairman, as much as I hate to say it, I think we have to have one of those. If that House bill passes, it's got to take this one over. I think we've got to do that, even though I don't want to. Just so it works out in the end. At the end of the day, it's what the majority of our.
Everyone understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carried.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think another amendment that we would make, and so this will affect most of the ones that have to do with so we would so the easiest way to do this is probably go to these worksheets that we looked at this morning. And so so what we would propose is that the Senate, with respect to the starting off with the deposits, there's 150 million that the Senate put into the corpus of the permanent trust fund, and the House put into 75 million in the PMTF reserve account and a like amount in the Common School Permanent Land Fund reserve account. We would propose as a part of this that we would recede to the original JAC position, which put 75 million in the corpus of the permanent trust fund and 75 million in the corpus of the Common School Permanent Land Fund. That's step one. Part two of that amendment is that the House would recede from its position on increasing the, since we're not putting that money in those reserve, if this were to pass, we would not be putting that money in the two reserve accounts anyway, that we would recede from the 225, temporarily raising the tipping limit in those to 150% of the respective spending policy amounts. We'd receive from that.
Mr. Chairman, is that item 73?
If you'll just hang on with me, we'll go back through and we'll tie all these together.
The answer is yes.
And I think the answer is yes. We'll tie those all back together and make sure we're covering the ones we want to.
I have to track with you.
Yep. And then I think if we do that, that resolves most of, then essentially mostly is with the funds flow. And that going to this sheet that we talked about before, if you go to the bottom and draw a line on once we get over the 200 million cap, that the Senate would recede to the House position on severance taxes. And the House would recede to the Senate position on federal mineral royalties. And go ahead, there's a
Mr.
question,
Chairman.
stop there.
Could you just say that again? So the Senate would recede from its position on severance. House recedes from its position on FMRs.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. And
No, I think it's just the opposite, Mr. Chairman.
the other way around,
Just the-
did I say it
just the
backwards?
opposite.
No, Mr. Chairman, I liked the way you said it first.
Now I forget what, so which,
Motion's been made.
okay, so I said it backwards. So the Senate would recede to the House's position on
FMRs.
FMRs. I thought that's what. Okay, they would recede to the FMRs, and the House would recede to the Senate position on severance tax.
Yes.
Okay. You got that? And then I think the final issue is that then the Senate would recede to the JAC position on the ECA. Because and because all this is tied into school funding in one way or
Okay, let us meet real quick.
another. Okay.
Will you join us?
It's the same.
Lloyd will walk through it with you.
You want me to do that or you want to wait?
I think Senator Hicks has a bill up in committee that he's got to go deal with. So let's go ahead and make your counter offer and
Okay,
make sure we
Mr. Chairman,
understand it.
Mr. Chairman, here, after conversing and considering your very kind and thoughtful offer, we would like to massage that a little and come back, and we'd like you to look at on page 3 and page 4. On page 3, look at item 60, which is the ECA. Then on page 4, items 65 and 66, which is where we put you guys put it all into the PMTF. We put it into the 2 reserves account. And our offer is to have those both come back to the JAC position, which I think was kind of what you suggested. We'd just, that's the way we left here in December. So we'll just come back to the JAC position. Neither one of them, we went back and reviewed the ECA nor the 65 and 66 were cram downs. So that's just going back to the ECA position. Then, Mr. Chairman, we would go to item 73 and delete the House position. Accept the Senate's proposal there on item. It would be on page 4, item 73, delete the House, accept your offer, delete the House position on extending that cap to 225. If you would go up, Mr. Chairman, to item 72, Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship, we would also accept your offer there, delete that House position. Then if you go back to page 2 and go up to the unfinished business on 39, is that we'd accept the House position on the severance tax and accept the Senate position on federal mineral royalties. Did I miss it?
Let's look at this one just for a second. So if we do that. So if we go to going through and start at the earliest one, so that takes care of, your offer would take care of the 2 unfinished parts of item 39
Correct.
on the summary sheet.
Correct.
Then if we go to page 3 of the summary sheet, lines 65 and 66, we would come back to the Senate position. We have come back to the JAC position. And we have a little bit different recollection of events.
We went
So,
back.
but that aside, that just repeating that now, just put it on the record.
What was the vote? We asked for the vote.
Okay, sure. Let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and talk about this now. Go ahead. Go ahead and tell us when, the date and the motion that was
Mr. Chairman, there were 2 motions relative to the ECA. In October, you made a motion to recommend the $10.8 million on, and I believe that was October 25th, the $10.2 million for educational supplies. I believe Representative Schwartz made that motion. And we don't tally if it was, but it was a large majority, and it was a majority on both sides. It was not all House members or all Senate members. Subsequently, we during markup, you denied the governor's letter. The governor's letter had a request for 1 year of the full ECA. Again, we did not track House versus Senate on that particular motion, but we know that it was not 7-5 on the denial of the governor's letter, because we do track House votes and Senate votes when there is opposition. And then the following vote also, I believe, was, well, I don't recall who made that motion, but again, it does not show up in our 7-5 tally on the ECA. To Representative Larson's point, the others in this series were cram downs. So the section 314, section 315 were 7-5 votes, recognizing a member might have been absent for a portion of those, which would have been 7-4 votes.
Okay, thank you. So then continuing on, and if we go to, so wait, that was 65 and 66.
Did you get 72 and
Well,
73?
I'm just going, so it's 65 and 66. And then on 70. That's okay. Just thanks. Bear with me for a minute. Just going down through and just looking for other ones that we have, that
Thank
we may
you.
not have dealt with.
I apologize.
So that takes care of 72, that 72 would delete the House position, and 73, you would delete the House position. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Chairman, did you go back on page 3 and capture 60? That's the ECA.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. All right. You want to go visit for a sec? Okay, let's go visit for a sec. Thank you. If we could have either Dawn or Elizabeth, can you join us for a minute?
Okay, we are back. Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. You know, we've considered your incredibly generous offer, but we'll respectfully decline for now. And, but I do have a couple of other things. Maybe we can, I've got a series of motions here, or a motion I'll make. Maybe we can clean up some of the rest of these things that I don't think there's really much disagreement on. And then maybe we can call it a night and we'll see if we can think about these things overnight, maybe come up with better solutions. So with your permission, Mr. Co-Chair, I would make the following motion that we would, on item 34, that we would delete the Senate position, which removed the number of reports that were that removed the number of report requirements in the Senate side. So we delete the Senate position on item 34. Then moving to page 3, top of page 3, on item 48, that we would delete, those are technical corrections, and ultimately would just delete the House amendments on, we delete the House amendments on item 48. On item 61, which there's a number of series of technical corrections in a Senate amendment, we'd adopt the Senate amendment there. That on item 62, which was, it's the footnote in the Department of Education's budget to support school districts for applied agriculture and farming programs during the coming biennium, the same as they did before, that we would adopt the Senate position there. On 63, which is the Board of Equalization report, we delete the House position on that. And at the end,
That's 4 out of 5 for the Senate so far.
I'm driving a hard bargain, what can I say? And then, so then going to page 4, we would delete the Senate position on item 64, which is a budget transfer that probably has little or no, little utility, if any. We would adopt the House position on 70. So now we're coming back, Mr. Chairman. But we would further amend, so it ultimately, technically it's a delete and further amend, but we'd amend it just to clear up the match requirement. I think that there was concern that on the $10 million that there wasn't a little bit, there's some ambiguity about whether there's a match required in the 10 million. I would propose a 1-to-1 match, so it's a 50-50 match. But we'll certainly look, if there's something that about your House member you'd want to do differently, I'd certainly.
Yeah, I would
We can
say
talk
no
about it.
less than a 1-to-1 match. Because I
That's-
think on the Gillette side, it's really, we're only contributing about a quarter or a third, because there's the counties involved
Okay,
and the,
so up to a 1-to-1 match? Okay,
yeah.
or at least a 1-to-1 match, a minimum, or however you, whatever word's there. And if we do that, I think then that leaves us with the ones we were, the items on the university and then the other motion we've been going
FMR
back and
severance.
forth here. I think that clears it up. So, so Don, would
Does
you,
everyone understand the motion?
everybody understand the motion? Mr.
Everyone
Chairman?
understand the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried. So, Mr. Co-Chair, you want to talk about when we meet tomorrow?
I think we have,
We meet in the morning at 8.
we meet, and when do we meet? We're at noon tomorrow, aren't we? Meet at 9 a.m. We're interviewing, and if you're available, we're also,
We can
We're gonna-
probably come off the floor.
and then so we'll have to come off the floor as soon as we can.
So what we'll need to know is that, do you know how soon you'll have the chance to review the CapCon and ARPA, and then whether or not you'll concur or appoint a committee?
You guys finish those today?
You finish both of them.
We can start looking at those tomorrow morning. And,
It's like when there was only 2 amendments to CapCon.
okay, we'll take a look at those. So we should be able to respond pretty quick to that.
ARPA, there was a bunch of them. So
So ARPA we'll start down through and we'll probably come and visit with you about them, make sure we
I
understand.
bring it up because if we can get those finished by Monday, then we got 3-day veto. Otherwise, we're stuck.
Yep. Get it. Good point, Mr. Co-Chair.
Okay. That, Don, any questions? Are we all set? All right.